Rama Rama Hare Hare. The final chapter of Canto 2 answers by citing the Lord version, finds us in the beginning of Canto 3 hearing about an important chapter. This section, Canto 3, Chapter 1, spans, the setting spans over several cantos. And the scene is Vidura, who's on pilgrimage, and we're going to hear about the pilgrimage in the Chapter 1 of Canto 3. He happens to come across Maitreya. Before he meets with Maitreya, there's several things that he experiences. One of those things is, because he's visiting holy places, he visits Prabhas. Prabhas is a place by the sea where he comes to find out, Vidura comes to find out, that the members of the Yadu dynasty had a big fratricidal war, and they annihilated one another. And that Krishna has departed, along with his other associates, from Dwarka. Before Vidura meets Maitreya, he meets with Uddhava, because that comes shortly. And when he meets Uddhava, he acts as if, and he speaks as if he doesn't know what already happened. Oh, Uddhava! And you think of Uddhava and you think of Krishna and Dwarka, because he spent so much time. Uddhava spent some time with Krishna in Mathura, but Krishna didn't stay so long in Mathura. I consulted with some god brothers that are very knowledgeable. How long did Krishna stay in Mathura? It's not clear. From our acharyas, it's very clear how many years and months did Krishna stay in Vrindavan. And Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur and Jiva Goswami are very specific. 11 years, 8 months. So when 10 years, 8 months. 10 years, 8 months. There's a lot of pastimes in Vrindavan. And there's not a lot of mention of his pastimes in Mathura. But we do know that Jarasandha came with armies 18 times. 17 times he was defeated. The 18th time Krishna left. And each time it's so many Akshohini divisions of soldiers. 13 Akshohini. So how long did Krishna stay in Mathura? One of my god brothers, who very knowledgeable, indicates in his teachings and writings, he expresses 25 years. So you add, what's 25 plus 11? This young boy over here. 25 plus 11 equals 30, how many? 36. So roughly, Krishna was 36 when he went to Dwarka. And how many years, what was Krishna's age when he left this planet? 125. 125 minus 36 equals? Come on, this is math. What's the answer? 125 minus 30, I want him to answer. How many? Huh? How many 9? 39? 89, yeah. 89. So that's how many years Krishna stayed in Dwarka. Very good math. 11, 25, 89 equals 125. So this pastime of Krishna's departing took place after 125 years of living on the earth planet, performing pastimes, and he returned to the spiritual world, or we moved on to the next universe where he's going to continue his pastimes, etc. And a very important person in his life was Uddhava. There's going to be mention in this third canto about the conversation between Uddhava and Krishna just before Krishna departed. But it's not told until 11th canto. So here's a detail about a distinction between Puranas and Itihasas. Itihasas, there's two well-known Itihasa examples. Mahabharata, the other one, Ramayana. And one of the characteristics of Itihasas is they're chronological. And one of the characteristics of Puranas is they're not chronological. They're very logical, but it's a different logic than chronological. So we hear about, in this third canto, what I'm doing is what's coming up, a little preview of Canto 3. We hear about Uddhava's conversation with Krishna, and then we hear about Maitreya, about Vidura meeting with Uddhava, and then Uddhava sending Vidura for further discussions to Maitreya. Now, how does Maitreya get into the picture? We'll hear. It's in the third canto. But this is like a little overview or preview. When Uddhava was so intimately related with Krishna that he knew what Krishna wanted. A really nice example. This is not third canto, it's just a nice example from 10th canto. 10th canto, chapter 78, where Krishna's, 78 is Krishna's activities in Dwarka. So the first half is describing what Krishna does in Dwarka, from his getting up with the rooster making his sound, and Krishna does what he does, and he meditates on himself. And some people imitate, they meditate on themselves. Ahangra upasana. It's mentioned in Bhagavad Gita. Some persons do that. I am supreme. So Krishna is supreme. So so Krishna's daily activities, including going to the assembly, Sudharma Assembly Hall, that was built by Vishwakarma under the direction of Krishna to have a nice place for Ugrasena to have his assemblies. And Krishna leaves each palace, gets in a chariot driven by Daruka. Doesn't say how many Darukas there were. And as he gets to the Sudharma Assembly Hall, all those Krishnas descend from their chariot and become one Krishna and enter the assembly hall. It must have been a pretty interesting sight. And so Krishna's in the assembly hall, and when Krishna's in the assembly hall, a messenger arrives, unexpected, although Krishna knew because he's orchestrating Krishna's pastimes. What I'm doing here is describing the intimacy of Uddhava with Krishna. So a messenger comes. Krishna asks, how can we be of service to you? What would you like? He comes with a messenger from kings. 20,000 kings are in prison. Kings are imprisoned by Jarasandha, and it's torture. And they're devotees of Krishna, and they want relief from this circumstance. So the messenger is carrying you. What message would you like me to carry back to them? As soon as he finishes his message, Krishna hasn't replied yet. Another messenger comes. And the other messenger is Narada Muni. Narada Muni is fantastic. He just knows when to appear and where to appear and what to say and the whole thing. Narada knew what Krishna wanted. Uddhava also knew what Krishna wanted. It's described, Narada knew that Krishna wanted to kill Jarasandha. In fact, that very day in the Sudharma Assembly Hall, the Yadu dynasty members were making a plan how to kill Jarasandha, the wicked Jarasandha, really wicked person, and very, very powerful. So, Narada comes to say, he doesn't say, Krishna, I know you want to kill Jarasandha. He says, I've come as a messenger from Yudhisthira. Who is Yudhisthira? Do you know who's Yudhisthira? Yeah. You know who the Pandavas are, right? He's the eldest brother of the Pandavas. The sequence goes, the eldest brother is over here, that's Yudhisthira. And next, Bhima, next Arjuna, and the next is the two twins, Nakula Sahadev. So Yudhisthira is the elder brother. Yudhisthira sent Narada as a messenger from him, from Yudhisthira, saying two things. I'd like to perform the Rajasuya Yajna, and I would like your blessings that this becomes successful. And I'd like your presence. Krishna hasn't given an answer yet. He's being asked to do two things at the same time. And when you have two things to do at the same time, you have to decide between one thing and the other. Because sometimes we make a mistake of trying to do two things at the same time. Multitasking, you know that one? And generally it's not a good idea. It's possible, but it's generally not a good, because you're neither attentive to this or to that. So make a decision. So what does Krishna do? He turns to Uddhava. What should I do? Because Uddhava knows what Krishna wants. He wants to kill Jarasandha. But he also knows there's a best way to do it and there's not the best way to do it. So he gives the best way to do it because he knows what Krishna wants. That's Uddhava. And many other examples, but it's a very good example. He knows Krishna's heart. He knows Krishna's mind. It's described in Chaitanya Charitamrita that one of the characteristics of a very qualified devotee or disciple is they know what their master wants. And they do what their master wants without even being asked. Because they know. No, they may ask, that's also okay. But they know. I won't go into that circumstance where that's described. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu says that. He says that about the eldest son of Shivananda Sain, without the details. He said, this Chaitanya Das, he knows my heart. He knows what I want. He's a very qualified devotee. without my disclosing, he knows. So, Uddhava knows. So, back to Canto 3. Uddhava knows that Krishna is going to depart. And he, take me with you. But Krishna is not going to take him with him. And so he cries, sobbing at his feet. And Uddhava asks many questions of Krishna, which is recorded in the 11th canto, but the incident is identified in Canto 3. And it says in Dwarka, and lo and behold, Maitreya just happens to be in the vicinity, and he happens to be present. It's just the three of them, Krishna, Uddhava, the parting instructions of Krishna to Uddhava, and Maitreya. And he hears and he realizes the whole thing, because Maitreya is a very advanced personality. He's a very elevated person, Maitreya Muni. He's not yet a pure devotee, but after hearing from Krishna and associating with Uddhava, he becomes qualified like that. So we're going to hear in Canto 3, Chapter 1, Vidura is going to meet with Uddhava, and then there's some discussion between Maitreya and Uddhava in a forest in Vrindavan, because Uddhava was sent by Krishna to go to the north country. So he went. Anyway, that's where they met, in a forest in Vrindavan. Ah, Uddhava, fancy meeting you in the forest of Vrindavan. How is everybody in Dwarka? He knew they had annihilated themselves, but he didn't say it. He didn't say it because he didn't want to be the bearer of bad news. So he didn't say it. Because you see Uddhava, you think of Krishna. How's Krishna? How's Balaram? And then everybody else by names. And they're all gone. And he knows it. So coming up is Uddhava goes into trance. He loses external consciousness. He becomes so deeply absorbed in remembrance of Krishna. But he struggles to come to external consciousness in order to be in service to Uncle Vidura. Say uncle because he's his uncle. That is to say, the father of Uddhava is Devabhaga. Devabhaga is a brother of Vasudeva, and let's see how it goes. Yeah, Vasudeva married, anyway, he's cousin, rather than doing all the genealogy. He's cousin. So Vidura's uncle. So Vidura is hearing, well, he's coming up. He just asks a question, how is everybody? And Uddhava goes off into this trance. And then he comes to external consciousness and starts speaking about Krishna. And he speaks about Krishna and Krishna and Krishna and Krishna and Krishna. And then Krishna in Vrindavan and Krishna outside of Vrindavan. He hit his Krishna button and he just keeps going. He's a deep lover of Krishna, and he knows that Krishna has departed. And he's feeling great separation. And Uddhava is reminding him of Krishna just by asking about Krishna. And it goes on all night. And the next morning, Uddhava says, I have to go now. Krishna told me to go to the north country, to Badrinath, and associate with the devotees of Narayan Rishi. So I have to go now. But your further questions you can find by speaking to Maitreya. He's not far from here. So he went and found Maitreya, and sure enough, then he meets with Maitreya. So that's a little preview, coming attractions. And I'm just going to read the first few verses from Canto 3, Chapter 1. And, it's just setting the scene. Canto 3, Chapter 1, text number 1, translation. Those of you that like to read along, you can, 3.1.1. Shukadeva Goswami said, after renouncing his prosperous home and entering the forest, King Vidura, the great devotee, asked this question of His Grace Maitreya Muni, Maitreya Rishi. Now, what led into this was a question. Maharaj Parikshit said to Shukadeva, way back in Canto 1, chapter, I forget which chapter it was, Canto 1, you said that that Vidura went on pilgrimage. Can you describe the pilgrimage? And you said he met with Maitreya. I'm sure the talks were very fantastic. Can you describe the talks between Vidura and Maitreya? That was the question. And now there's response. Shukadeva said what he said. Vidura left home. What else is there to say about the residential house of the Pandavas? Sri Krishna, the Lord of everything, acted as your minister. He used to enter that house as if it were his own, and he did not take any care of Duryodhana's house. What was the incident? When Krishna came, as a peace messenger, Duryodhana greeted him outside the city. They set up festoons and banana tree arches and rose water on the streets and flowers, and he came out of the city to receive Krishna, speaking to Krishna as if he was a dear cousin. Because he was a cousin, but he, in his heart, Duryodhana didn't have affection for Krishna. He had enmity toward Krishna. He had enmity toward Krishna because he had enmity toward the Pandavas, which means enmity towards Krishna. So he said nice words, socially nice words that weren't true. And then you're this and you're that and the other thing. And you come, can you please take your meal at my home? This is outside the city. And Krishna's reply was, there's two reasons. I'm going to wait till everybody's paying attention again. It's nice. There's two reasons why somebody might eat. One is if they're hungry. And the other is even if they're not hungry, they may eat because of love. I'm not hungry. And here in Hastinapur, there's no love, especially you. Very blunt. So I'm not going to accept your invitation because there's no love and I'm not hungry. But there is one place where I will go, and that's Vidura's home, because there's love. And it was, he's blunt. He came on a peace mission, and Duryodhana doesn't like Krishna, but he's speaking as if he likes Krishna. So he went to Vidura's home. And you know what happened when he went to Vidura's home? Vidura's wife was so excited, she had to prepare something. There's different versions, but one of the versions is she served the banana peels instead of bananas. Another version where she served porridge that was just like inferior. And Krishna was very happy. He ate the banana peels. Or he ate the porridge, not because it was something special, but the love of Vidura and his good, beloved wife. And that's where he stayed. That's what's being said. He didn't touch, did not take any care of Duryodhana's house. But the person that's being spoken to is Parikshit. So Parikshit is the grandson of the Pandavas. So he's speaking, Sri Krishna, the Lord of everything, acted as your minister. Well, he was the minister of the Pandavas, and therefore the minister of the grandson of the Pandavas. He used to enter that house, the house of the Pandavas, as if it were his own. I think I'm going to skip. I'll just read a little bit of the purport. The house of the Pandavas was as good as Vrindavan, and Vidura should not have given up that place of transcendental bliss. Therefore, the reason for his quitting the house was not exactly family misunderstanding, semicolon. Rather, Vidura took the opportunity to meet Rishi Maitreya and discuss transcendental knowledge. For a saintly person like Vidura, any disturbance due to worldly affairs is insignificant. Such disturbances, however, are sometimes favorable for higher realization, and therefore Vidura took advantage of a family misunderstanding in order to meet Maitreya Rishi. Interesting, huh? Because, as you know, he was insulted. But, Vidura's, not only he's a big boy, he's a perfected soul. He's not moved by words of a person like Duryodhana. But it's also said he was there, he stayed in order to render some service. And the service was to help his elder brother, who he had affection for, to do the right thing. And he tried, and he tried, and he tried. One evening, it's described, he spent the whole night trying to, have him do the right thing, understand the diabolical nature of Duryodhana and his close associates. And because of Dhritarashtra's attachment to the idea that my sons should become the king, because I should have become the king, so therefore my sons should become the king, he just closed his eyes to all their diabolical stuff, which he knew all about. He was too attached. And Dhritarashtra said something like what Dhruva said to Narada. He said, your advice is right, but I can't follow it. I'm too much attached to the idea that my sons should become the king, even they're bad. Too attached. So Vidura tried and he tried, and when this insult came, he realized there's no service for me here. Not because he was hurt by harsh words, he left. That's not the case. So he left because there wasn't any service. And now here we're hearing, and also there was an opportunity, A and B. A, to purify himself, going to the holy places, because he could have gone straight to Krishna. But he didn't. Because he felt, I've been in this contaminating atmosphere, I'm not fit to be in the company of Krishna, I need to purify myself. So he went in pilgrimage to purify himself. And to hear from holy people, because when you go on pilgrimage, it's not just take your camera and take pictures and send it back to your friends saying we went to this place and that place. I mean, that's okay, but there's another and higher purpose besides the purification of visiting a holy place, and that's hearing topics from qualified persons. So he was doing that, and particularly mentioned here is he wanted to meet Maitreya. Now, how did he know even about Maitreya? Because he's an exceptional personality. He's Yamaraj. He's one of our great authorities, Yamaraj. And Vidura's Yamaraj. Text number 3. This is Maharaj Parikshit speaking to Shukadev. Now here comes the questions part. Where and when did the meeting and discussion take place between Saint Vidura and His Grace Maitreya Muni? Kindly oblige, my Lord, and describe this to us. Now he's saying us, but it's not somebody else with him. Yes, there is. There's a whole assembly. Purport. Exactly what Shonaka Rishi inquired about Sutta Goswami, and Sutta Goswami replied, that's from the end of chapter 10, the beginning of end of Canto, chapter 10 of Canto 2, beginning here. So Srila Shukadeva Goswami replied to King Parikshit's inquiries. The king was very anxious to understand the meaningful discussion that took place between the two great souls. That's the two great souls, are Maitreya and Vidura. I mean, the question was, he's so elevated and he's so elevated, they had discussions. It must have been super elevated discussions. Can you describe those discussions? Text 4. Saint Vidura was a great and pure devotee of the Lord, and therefore his questions to His Grace Rishi Maitreya must have been very purposeful, on the highest level, and approved by learned circles. So it's bouncing back and forth between Maharaj Parikshit asking Shukadev, and then Shukadev can reply, but it's Sutta narrating that discussion. Yes? So that's the next. Sutta Goswami said, the great sage Shukadev Goswami was highly experienced and was pleased with the king. Thus, being questioned by the king, he said, please hear the topics attentively. So back to the purport of the previous verse. A little bit. Questions and answers among different classes of men have different value. Inquiries by mercantile men in a business exchange cannot be expected to be highly purposeful in spiritual values. Questions and answers by different classes of men can be guessed by the caliber of the persons concerned. Then he goes into Krishna and Arjuna Bhagavad Gita. A common man who has no interest in spiritual values has no need to approach a spiritual master, just as a matter of following fashion. And the bottom paragraph, as a student, Maharaj Parikshit was serious about learning the science of God, and Shukadeva Goswami was a bona fide spiritual master in the transcendental science. Both of them knew that the topics discussed by Vidura and Rishi Maitreya were elevated. And thus, Maharaj Parikshit was very interested in learning from the bona fide spiritual master. So I'm just going to read 2 more verses and then we'll close up. Shukadeva Goswami said, King Dhritarashtra became blind. No, he was already materially blind, but this is the other kind of blind. He became blind under the influence of impious desires to nourish his dishonest sons, and thus he set fire to the lacquer house to burn his fatherless nephews, the Pandavas. Now the Bhagavatam says that he did it. It was his thing. In Mahabharata, it's a little different. In Mahabharata, it's Duryodhana came to get permission from his father, who said, don't do it. And he said, I'm going to do it. I can't live with these people. So he looked the other way. So Duryodhana went to his father to disclose and seek his blessings. He didn't really get his blessings. But he was, adamant and threatening, self-destruction. So his father looked the other way. He knew, but he didn't stop it. Because he had undue affection. And, behind that affection, in addition to, this is his eldest son, it was driven further by the fact that he wanted to be the king, but he couldn't. So he wanted his sons to be the king. And if the Pandavas get out of the way, then his sons can become the king. That was like in the back, driving all the other things. Ambition, material ambition. And, false ego. I should be the king. If I can't, my son should be the king. And therefore enmity. Envy of those who were the rightful heirs by law. But he was going to break the law by bumping them off. And in this case, it wasn't even, anyway. Dhritarashtra was blind from birth, but his blindness in committing impious activities to support his dishonest sons was a greater blindness than his physical lack of eyesight. The physical lack of sight does not bar one from spiritual progress, but when one is blind spiritually, even though physically fit, that blindness is dangerously detrimental to the progressive path of human life. Text 7. The king did not forbid his son Dushasana's abominable action of grabbing the hair of Draupadi, the wife of the godly king Yudhisthira, even though her tears washed the red dust on her breast. Text 8. Yudhisthira, who was born without any enemy, was unfairly defeated in gambling. But because he had taken the vow of truthfulness, he went off to the forest. When he came back in due course and begged the return of his rightful share of the kingdom, he was refused by Dhritarashtra, who was overwhelmed by illusion. This is that scene where finally it was decided, the Pandavas would have the kingdom of Indraprastha to rule, which was just like an empty forest, the Khandava forest. You can go stay over there. Short purport will end. Maharaj Yudhisthira was the rightful heir to his father's kingdom, but just to favor his own sons, headed by Duryodhana, Dhritarashtra, Maharaj Yudhisthira's uncle, adopted various unfair means to cheat his nephews of their rightful share of the kingdom. At last, the Pandavas demanded only 5 villages, one for each of the 5 brothers, but that was also refused by the usurpers. This incident led to the war of Kurukshetra, the battle of Kurukshetra, therefore was induced by the Kurus, not the Pandavas. Paragraph. As Kshatriyas, the proper livelihood of the Pandavas was only to rule and not to accept any other occupation. A Brahmana, Kshatriya, or Vaishya will not accept employment for his livelihood under any circumstances. So the intrigue is high. The lessons are even better than the intrigue. It's sometimes a little difficult to follow all the intrigue, but it's not so difficult to follow the lessons. Something that I've learned from reading Srimad Bhagavatam is both in the Bhagavatam and the commentary of our acharyas, they don't place so much importance. They do, but they don't place so much importance in chronology. They, to some degree, or how much time this and how much time that, and for some people that's really important, and that's okay. But what's most important is not the chronology and sequences of things, but the message, the lessons to be learned. Here's one example. I'm engaged in a discussion with one devotee about the topic of chronology and durations of things. So, for example, there are, according to our acharyas, there are two Varaha incarnations. And the Varaha incarnation, Lord Boar, appear one in a white color, another in a red color, Rakta and Sweta Varaha. And they appear during different yuga cycles, not necessarily during different days of Brahma, but different yuga cycles. And when narrating the Varaha Leela, when narrating the Varaha Leela, the narrator, Shukadev, makes no distinction. In fact, according to our acharyas, he blends the particulars of this Varaha and that Varaha into one narration. Now, how do we even know that there's different narrations? Because there's other Puranas to speak of this and speak of that. And then you read Srimad Bhagavatam, and Shukadev makes no distinction between this and that. But because our acharyas are quite knowledgeable in Scripture, there's this one, there's that one, and they're blended. The point is, sometimes, not always, but sometimes, the narrations of Srimad Bhagavatam can be a little confusing, unless you have like the big picture of what all the Puranic literatures have to say about things, and then you can put this together with that because you have the big picture. But what's important for us is not necessarily, you know how this fits together with that. It's nice. It's nice. And when you see this doesn't fit together with that, it's quite okay. Because what's important is the essence and not the details. And there's more to say on that topic, but there's more to say on that topic. Here's another example. Another example is what happened after Krishna departed this world. Where did the Pandavas go? The Bhagavatam says one thing, and Mahabharata says another thing. According to Srimad Bhagavatam, the Pandavas left this world in their self-same bodies and returned to Krishna in the spiritual realm. Mahabharata doesn't say that. So you know what Mahabharata says. So is it this or that? And it doesn't mean the Mahabharata got it wrong or the Bhagavatam got it wrong. If one's right, then the other's wrong. It's not like that. There's different ways of understanding such things, but there's different cycles of the yugas when Krishna's appearing, and when Krishna appears in a day of Brahma, it can be this description and that description. And another is, Mahabharata is teaching us primarily, not entirely, but it's teaching us virtue, proper conduct, dharma. Dharma, that which is to be followed and that which is not to be followed. And so what happens in Mahabharata is there's consequences for whatever mistakes were made, and they had to see what they saw, and then they went, to another place. It doesn't say what Bhagavatam tells us. The Bhagavatam wants us to understand paradharma. What's the distinction between swa-dharma and para-dharma? It's like the conclusion of Bhagavad Gita. Sarvadharmam parityaja mamikam sharanam praja aham tvam sarva papibhyo mokshayashyami ma suchaha. So according to Bhagavad Gita, you take shelter of Krishna, which the Pandavas certainly did, and no sinful reaction. Aham tam sarva papebhyo, moksha. Now that's the essence of Bhagavad Gita's instruction, or the highest point of Bhagavad Gita's instructions. But the major part of Mahabharata is teaching Dharma. So that's Swadharma. Swadharma is one's own Dharma. The duties, prescribed duties for Brahmanas, Kshatriyas, Vaishyas, Shudras. And one should follow, according to what Shastra says. And if there's violations, then you're responsible. And even if you follow Swadharma without the taking shelter of Krishna, there's still consequences, like, good consequences, and you go to the good place. You go to heaven. But there's bondage in heaven. There's another birth and death and disease and old age. So therefore, the recommendation of Bhagavad Gita is don't just do Dharma, do Paradharma. What's that? Whatever it is that you do, you take full shelter of Krishna. And you follow the codes of your prescribed duties. My ashram is that of sannyas. So it wouldn't be so good if I went off and got a job. It wouldn't be so good for a householder if you didn't go off and get a job. So we have different duties and so forth. So you do your Swadharma, but you do it for Krishna. The Paradharma is way up here. Mamekam Sharanam, that's Paradharma. And then you'll fill that out. You hear about that from the Bhagavatam more and more. And you carry out your Swadharma, subordinate to the Paradharma. So all of that is, there's different renderings in the sequence of events, and the lessons we're to learn from those sequence of events between different Puranas is quite okay. It's quite okay. What's important is what's important. And the supreme importance, as in the Bhagavatam, Savai Pungsang Paro Dharmo, what's Paradharma? Adho Bhaktir Adhoksaje, Yato Bhaktir Adhoksaje, engage in devotional service to Adhoksaja. So, I'm very happy to hear that you're following Srimad Bhagavatam carefully. You completed Canto 2 and now beginning Canto 3. It's a big adventure. And very soon, besides hearing from Maitreya, you're going to hear from Vidura, and Vidura's way up there. He is ecstatic devotee. But he also gives deference to Maitreya, because Maitreya is elder. And he shouldn't speak when there's an elder. Now he's around the corner. Maitreya had gone into the North Country, but Vidura was sent to Maitreya to hear from Maitreya. So the question is, how did this meeting take place? So you're going to hear. There's the lineage of events, but most important is the Paradharma. And the Rasika Bhakta, Uddhava, is going to take you for a ride. He loves Krishna very much. And you feel it. I mean, if you listen with that kind of heart, you feel his love for Krishna. It comes out because he has deep, profound love for Krishna, and he's feeling separation from Krishna. As seeing Uddhava reminds Vidura of Krishna, Vidura's questions remind Uddhava of Krishna. And they're different, they're pure devotees, but Uddhava's way up there. You'll see. It's a nice section of the Bhagavatam. You get to associate with Uddhava just by reading, just keep reading this, the next few chapters. You get an introduction to what very, very elevated pure devotion looks like. Okay, so any discussion?
Hare Krishna Maharaj. There were a lot of sinful acts by Kauravas to Pandavas
Yes.
during the Mahabharata times.
Yes, not.
And Krishna knew Kali Yuga is coming. Some of the acts are so painful that you want to just not hear about them, the disrespect to Draupadi. Was it the message Krishna was sending to us for Paradharma? Because he knew there will be many Duryodhans in the Kali Yuga and far too less Yudhishthir's. And was it those acts, were they pastimes performed through Krishna's mercy so that we know what's right or wrong, or was there more message to it?
There's multiple things. It's not, you know, this and that in this bucket and that's it. So the multiple things. Krishna's appearance, as we know, was to fulfill, one of the reasons for Krishna's appearance was to fulfill the request of Mother Earth to relieve the earth of the burden of demoniac kings, and one of them was Duryodhana. So Duryodhana was a demoniac king, and we get the picture of some of the demoniac things, not all, but you know, very diabolical person. Attempted murder multiple times, for example, and defiling Draupadi, for example, and he was into it. So it's one of the dimensions is that Krishna, whoever diabolical someone may be, Krishna will protect his devotees. Now, protecting of the devotees doesn't mean you'll never stub your toe, or you'll never have a pain in your knee, or you never have like what happened this morning in this house. It's not, it's not that misfortune will never come your way, but Krishna will protect you. And if there's some misfortune, anyway, there's many layers and layers and layers of lessons. Now, what to do, what should you do, what should I do, what should any one of us do, when there's a harassing personality. There's not too many Duryodanas around. There's really bad people, and those really bad people do really bad things, and they engage other people in doing their bad things for them. And then, there's chaos in this world. But ultimately, besides the flow of Krishna's sanctioning bad people to do bad things, there's the Krishna correction factor. And the Krishna correction factor is one's spiritual well-being is protected. One's physical well-being may be at risk by demoniac people, but ultimately the spiritual well-being is protected. Just like Vidura. I mean, Krishna, when he visited Hastinapur, he wanted to bring peace. Now, if he wanted to bring peace, why didn't it happen? Because he's the supreme. He wanted to bring peace because that's what he wants. But Duryodhana said no. Not only said no, there's a plan to attack and kill him, or to harm him at least. And no, Krishna did what Krishna did, and then it stopped. But all good measures to prevent a demoniac person from doing demoniac things should be taken before something like this, before the battle, et cetera, before using one's God-given gift of strength. One should be looking for a peaceful solution, even when Krishna knew it's not possible, because Duryodhana is Duryodhana. He knew it was inevitable. He knew. So, there are many layers of lessons. Krishna is not going to interfere with the free will of living entities. That's why there's this material creation. We talked about it last night. Why creation? Because we wanted it. There's some people that are they're rebellious, And they don't care. They don't care. They don't care. They don't care. So what do you do when that happens? What should you and I do? That's a lesson. We take shelter of Krishna. And one of the lessons of the Bhagavatam is we propagate the Bhagavatam's message, because that's the antidote or panacea, the medicine for the siege of Kali. As I'm speaking, I'm thinking about a situation that happened during our visit to Vrindavan during Kartik month. Some of you may know, some of you may have been there. The locals said, because of pandemic, tourism went down like to almost zero. But because this Kartik month, it wasn't the pandemic time, there were 4 times the number of visitors to Vrindavan. It was oppressive. It was too many people. And so there we were. We specifically went to Vrindavan town after Kartik finished, because tourism was dropped down a little bit. But there was still a zillion people, too many people in those narrow streets of Vrindavan. And the same behavior of this in India they call it two-wheelers, but the motorcycle guys. You know what it's like. And there's 10,000 people ahead of them, and they just keep doing it. And there's another guy behind them, another 10 people behind them. And so we got to a certain point in a narrow street. One of those guys, motorcycle guy, was right next to me, and he was doing this horn thing. I just reached out my hand and touched his hand. Said, in English, please don't do that. He didn't speak English, but he understood the message, I'm sure. And what did he do? And was, and the guide that was taking us through the streets, the ISKCON devotee said, they don't care. It wasn't like he didn't say it with that same tone. It just was matter of fact, they don't care. They don't care. They don't care. The selfishness and passion and whatever, there's no rules. Some people are just like that. Now what do? There's lessons. What do you do when there's Duryodanas, or there are people that just don't care? No, this motorcyclist wasn't like Duryodhana exactly. He, etc. He didn't do all the diabolic. So, what do? Take shelter of Krishna. There may be other things that you do and not do, but the essence is you're protected if you take shelter of Krishna. And you understanding the darkness of this age of Kali, you have to do something on the positive besides just tolerate. And that's you propagate transcendence. And that's something we all can do. It's something we should do. It's something that will make things different. Not only our own internal experience of the motorcycle guy or people that do oppressive things, but change the direction. That's what our founder Acharya repeated over and over. That was what carried him, and he made a difference. Big, and it's still happening. So we can make a difference. We're little people. What can we do? We're little people. We can do something to our capacity. And so we propagate. We try to be examples of what the Bhagavatam teaches, and we try to encourage people to hear and assimilate Shrinvanti, Gayanti, Grananti Sadhavaha. That's what we try to do. That's what we can do. Depending upon someone's gifts from Krishna, someone may this, someone may sing, someone may dance, someone may make dramas, someone may make movies, someone may something. revive Krishna consciousness within ourselves, and give that opportunity. And propagate means you give the opportunity to others, and people can decide. But that the impact is going to elevate. It's something we can do, and then put energy there, receive and give. Anything else?
Hare Krishna, Guru Maharaj. Guru Maharaj, when you said Shrinvanti Gayanti Kranti Sadhavaha, it was reminding me of the verse Tadvag Visargo, and in the verse there's a word Viplavaha, and that means revolutionary.
Yes.
So that, and ever since the start, that word has really stood out to me, because Srila Prabhupada created a revolution, and each of us can create revolutions in our own life or in the lives of our extended family or like circles. And a personal realization that I've had is, I think it's like the last year or so, I'm a criminal justice correction administration major. So
Say it again.
I'm a criminal justice major and I specialize in correction administration.
Oh.
So I was really passionate about it. I guess last year I was very, very like, you need to save the world and there's so much crime. But something I've realized now, I'm halfway through my major, is it's impossible. It's not going to work with like your method of thinking and what the government wants to do. And we've tried policy after policy and statistic after statistic. And there's no end. It seems like it goes down for some time, and then suddenly we get, no, there's another case that needs to be solved. And we're just like, this is like a whirlpool. It just pulls you down. And I think after hearing lots of recorded lectures of Prabhupada, and of course spending amazing amounts of time with you, I've realized that I have some qualities that can be used in Krishna service. And of course I can do whatever, if I have a passion for that, I can do a little bit of that. But the only thing that'll really help the world is awakening people's Krishna consciousness, because you could adjust the shadow, but you really can't adjust the shadow unless you adjust the item that casts the shadow. So unless people's inside is right, you really can't. You can seem like, I can make some gun control laws stricter, and we can spend hours in 9 to 5 in trying to make that gun control law stricter, but they'll find another weapon. So unless you adjust their consciousness by first adjusting your consciousness and propagating, like you said, there would be no cure. That's just a comment, Maharaj.
Teenagers' realization on making an impact. And just a couple other things. Impact is incremental, but incremental with many people makes a difference. We're little. You're little. I'm little. We're all little. What can we do? Kali Yuga marches on. However, the combined effort is effective, and at least the number of devotees is in proportion to those who are living a godly life, not just in name but in fact, is very small. But the impact is powerful, and it's expanding, provided what's right is inside with us, more than changing what's outside. What's inside with us is most important. And then concentric circles going out, some impact can be made. So we rely upon each other to make some significant change. Viplava. So those of you that, she spoke really fast. There's a verse in the first Canto Bhagavatam where Vyasadeva is being instructed by Narada what to do. Because Vyasadeva just completed compiling all the Vedas and he's feeling dissatisfied. He wants to know, why am I feeling that? So you should compose literature that's not just true, but it awakens transcendence. And that which awakens transcendence, janata, agha, viplava. Janata, people in general, agha, who are sinful, viplava. It can bring about a revolution in the impious lives of people in general. Okay, so let's see. Anything else? Look over here.
Yes, you're correct, but like if you try to change their like way of thinking, when you're like in a lecture, when that person is in a lecture, you'll feel like, I'm turning into a real spiritual person.
You're turning into a what?
You'll think like, like when you're sharing like spiritual knowledge with that person, you'll that person will think, I have a real spiritual feeling. But when you're doing jobs and activities, there's like a possibility you might forget it.
So let me say back. When you're speaking to someone, you may feel, this is a spiritual message and I feel strength from the spiritual message.
Yeah.
But when you're doing your day-to-day stuff, it evaporates, it goes somewhere.
Yes,
That's your point.
Maharaj.
Okay. Welcome to experience of life. Now, what's the solution? And the solution is gradual evolution of consciousness or higher consciousness. Prabhupada explains Darwin's idea of evolution of species is in Padma Purana. It's not a new idea. So to move from animal to human is not just a form of life, it's also consciousness. So in the human form of life, you and I and all of us have the opportunity to develop human consciousness. So the animal consciousness is forgetful, and the human consciousness is mindful. You've heard the phrase mindfulness. So to be mindful consistently requires there's a conception of oneself, and even for that matter, an attachment to the plane of higher consciousness, or even more, the persons who exemplify that higher consciousness.
Yeah, I agree, but like with that mindfulness, we get free will, and like
Not you get free will because of mindfulness. It's intrinsic to who you are. So the mindfulness can be mindful of matter or mindful of spirit. Mindfulness is with us. Mindfulness is already, consciousness is of the soul. Mindfulness is, where does your consciousness go? That's a free will choice. We've been conditioned to the matter absorption, forgetfulness absorption. So for you, it's practice, but practice of something that's already natural. Do you remember learning how to ride a bicycle? It was a little awkward, wasn't it?
yes.
Took a while. But now you ride a bicycle, you don't have to think about it. Now that's a motor skill, physical, but they're spiritual, and it's natural. This other is the disease state. So you practice healthy, and you become healthy. And then it becomes very natural that while you're doing stuff, the mindfulness goes to who you really are and the purpose of this human form of life. But there's not a lot of reinforcement. There's a lot of the other reinforcement, that do stuff, do it better, compete, and all of those things. Get good grades in school because, yay, I got 5 gold stars after my name in my report card. Rather than, let me live my life in school in relation to my peers, in relation to myself, where Krishna's at the center. Instead, it's natural. It's natural. It's natural. Then there's things that the other is unnatural. So, keep taking the medicine. It's good medicine. The medicine is through your ear. Interesting, taking medicine through the ear. There's a verse in the Bhagavatam that says like that. This spiritual medicine is taken through the ear, and it cures the disease of the heart. So you continue. You're young. I was young. And I've been doing this for a number of years. You know how many years I've been doing this? Over 50 years. It's a long time to do one thing. But there's a cumulative effect. And it's not that the conditioned tendency is 100% gone. It's like remembrance of Krishna has become much stronger. I can say, honestly, remembrance of Krishna has become much stronger, even when doing stuff. Even when doing daily stuff or troublesome stuff, the tendency with troublesome stuff is you go to problem solving. Everybody in the room knows that. Here comes a problem. You forget Krishna, it goes to problem solving. But when your Krishna consciousness, your attachment to Krishna is awakened, immediately your thoughts go to Krishna. Problem solving comes second, and thought goes to Krishna comes first. And Krishna then Krishna can give the intelligence how to address the problem. It's a little bit like the discussion previous. There's lessons to be learned. And when attachment to Krishna is there, that's where you're attached to, that's where your mind goes. What you're attached to is where your mind goes. So as attachment to Krishna, which is natural, it's wholesome, it's of the soul, it's who we are, then that becomes how you live your life. And it's not just forgetfulness, it's mindfulness of who you really are. It takes a while. The disease is pretty strong. Through the ear. Pravishta karna randrena svanam bhava saroruham. Nice verse. Karna is the ear, right? Karna. You know who Karna is in the Mahabharata? Karna was one of the brothers of the Pandavas, a son of Kunti. His name was Karna. Karna. So Karna means ear. Pravishta means enters. Pravishta Karna Randrena, the whole. Swanam Bhava Saroruham. It's a nice verse. This Dunoti Shamalam Krishna. It makes the heart and the mind very peaceful. It's medicine taken through the ear. And it cleanses the heart, makes the consciousness peaceful and pure, and you can stay fixed. It's good medicine. Behind you, there was someone with a question.
Hare Krishna Maharaj, thank you for the class.
I think we'll take this as the last question, if that's okay.
Yesterday you were talking about Srimad Bhagavatam and describing it as Amala Puran. And there are certain sections in Srimad Bhagavatam where it says that one may get the Purusharthas, the Dharma, Artha, Kama, Moksha as the benefit of reading Bhagavatam. How do we understand that Bhagavatam is?
Do you understand his question? Do you understand? I understand his question. I'm looking around the room. Do you understand his question? Yes? No? Okay. Yesterday evening, there was the discussion that there's this picture, I painted a picture of the Puranas. And there's Puranas that are written for those in the mode of ignorance, the mode of passion, the mode of goodness. And even when there's the mode of goodness, there's a tinge, depending, a degree of passionate ignorance mode for those in the mode of goodness. However, so that the 18 Puranas are divided 666, addressing persons who are strongly influenced by the mode of ignorance, strongly influenced by the mode of passion, predominantly influenced by the mode of goodness, and those are called Sattva Guna Puranas. However, the Srimad Bhagavatam is called Amala. Mala means bad, or, contamination, dirt, bad stuff. It's Amala, spotless Purana. No passion, ignorance. Shuddha Sattva, pure goodness. Srimad Bhagavatam. So his question is, Srimad Bhagavatam is Amala Purana, or pramana, or evidence. So how come it encourages things that are material, like heavenly planets and achieving purushartha, means dharma, artha, kama, moksha, material stuff? Why is there encouragement like that in the spotless Purana, the transcendental Purana? No tinge. That's his question. The readers, one answer is, the readers of Srimad Bhagavatam are not necessarily coming from the place of having no material hankerings. It's meant to bring people, elevate the consciousness to that place of no longer material hankerings. But the readers of the Bhagavatam may be persons who have such hankerings. So it's the phala, or the fruit, the phala stuti. There's sections in any scripture that say you do this and you get that. The phala for persons who they're not yet in pure consciousness, and that's almost everybody that reads the Bhagavatam or reads anything, is they have desires. So a subset of achieving paradharma, or pure love for Krishna, includes all other things. Or if you have $1 million, you can solve your $10 problems. It's $1 million literature, and oh, by the way, you can take care of your $10 problems. In case you're thinking, I got to take care of my $10 problems. It's there for those people. But the thrust, the essence, the Shakti of the Bhagavatam is paradharma, Shuddha Bhakti. You're not going to miss out on other stuff. Just go for Shuddha Bhakti, and the other stuff will be fulfilled.
Thank you, Maharaj.
Okay. You have something in the back. Yes. Let's go in the back. Lady in the back. All the way. Oh, you have something also. Okay, go ahead. We'll catch. And then you two ladies will be our final. Go ahead, Mataji.
Hare Krishna Maharaj.
Hare Krishna.
All glories to Srila Prabhupada.
Prabhupada ki jai.
Please accept my humble obeisances, Maharaj. You mentioned about the Paradharma and Swadharma, right?
I mentioned, yes.
So Swadharma I understood. Paradharma means when, what to do,
Paradharma means
without
full shelter, unmixed shelter in the personality of Godhead, and serve Him in that mood. That's Paradharma.
I just want a clarification. Without Krishna consciousness, so what is the Paradharma?
There's not Krishna consciousness. Without Krishna consciousness, you don't have Paradharma. No, you say Krishna consciousness, it doesn't mean exclude Lord Nrsingadev, or exclude Lord Narayan, or exclude Balaji, or exclude. It's not. It's the Bhagavan. Without Bhagavat Bhakti, there's no Paradharma.
No.
Is that all right? Does that answer your question? You still don't look satisfied.
Yes. more details, like what is the paradharma definition?
Definition of paradharma you want. Well, let's go to Bhagavad Gita. You ready? In Bhagavad Gita, we find a definition. Several places in Bhagavad Gita. One place that my mind is going to at the moment is chapter 13. You can look it up later. Text number 8 through 12. Because 13.8 through 12. 8 through 12. They're a collection of verses. And the topic that Krishna is answering from Arjuna's question is, what's knowledge? And there's 19 items listed. And of the 19 items, one is the primary characteristic, which is paradharma. And from the one that's the primary, all the secondary ones come. The one that's primary is paradharma. Mayi, the Sanskrit is Mayi cha ananya, Mayi cha ananya bhaktir avyabhicharini. Avyabhichari, undivided devotion unto Krishna. Mayi cha ananya yogena bhaktir avyabhicharini. That's paradharma. And from paradharma comes swadharmas, or paradharmas is the resting place, the basis and support of swadharma, or all good. The rest of it is qualities, character. So you're a spirit soul, so am I. And we would like to have good qualities, because it's, not nice to have bad qualities. How do we get good qualities? We don't go to Kmart. They have lots of stuff, but they don't have good qualities. We go to Krishna because he has a big warehouse, a good quality warehouse. And he likes to decorate his devotees with good qualities. But he doesn't decorate the same way those who don't have paradharma. The qualities may come and go. And they're not sat. They're temporary, asat. So we want good qualities that are fixed. So paradharma is the basis and support. That's Mayi cha ananya yogena bhakti avyabhichari. That's an adjective. Undivided bhakti. That's paradharma. And from that comes nice things. All nice things. And then we can, you and I and everyone can carry out our duties in life. Swadharma. You're a mother and a female, and you're a teacher of your friends and so forth and so on. So you have different duties given, the circumstances of embodiment, and it changes and it changes and it changes. So that's swadharma, your prescribed duties. And you can carry them out properly if paradharma is in place. So what's paradharma? Good question. Mayi cha ananya. So read it. It's there in the purport. You have the verse number, and that's a nice description. There's other places, but I like that place.
Okay.
To explain what it is. Is that it?
Yes, Maharaj.
There's someone else behind you.
I have another.
You have another one. You go ahead quickly.
I read a couple of days back in the Canto 4 and chapter 25.
Good for you.
What, Maharaj?
Good for you. You're reading Bhagavatam.
Along with the devotees only, Maharaj.
Okay, but good for you. And good for everybody that's reading together. Next.
The question is, Srila Prabhupada mentioned about spiritual message need to listen with the left ear, and he mentioned 9 gates, and Puranjana message about Puranjana, Maharaj Puranjana. So
You want to know what the significance of left ear is? Is that what your question is?
What is?
What's your question? Say your
So
question.
why Srila Prabhupada mentioned about the left
That's what
ear?
I thought you wanted to ask. Mantra diksha happens that way. You can, right now we're hearing with both ears. And you keep going with hearing with both ears. Don't plug your right ear. It's mantra diksha is given by guru to disciple through the left ear. That's the significance. Now, step back from that statement, and we're hearing with both ears, generally speaking. No problem. Keep hearing with both ears. What's the significance is your question, and I've given the answer. And you want to keep going on the question, or you're okay?
I'm okay.
Okay. Can we give the microphone to the back?
Hare Krishna Maharaj, please if you can help me understand like what should be our daily activity when we are on the pilgrimage, visit any pilgrimage, and what should we carry or bring back after we return back from the pilgrimage? What is that most precious things that we bring back?
From a pilgrimage,
Yeah,
specifically?
and our daily activity when we are during our pilgrimage.
During a pilgrimage. This is a pilgrimage question.
Yes, Prabhu.
Not just your home life, but when you're on pilgrimage,
Yes, Prabhu.
what should your focus be and what should you bring back after? That's the question?
Yes, Prabhu.
Well, my favorite answer to a question like this is it depends. In other words, there's not a cookie cutter answer. There's this bucket and that's it. And if you're not doing this bucket, you get an F in your exam. It's not like that. Therefore, it depends. So each of us, now saying it differently, each of us have a spiritual trajectory, and wherever we are, and so wherever you are is where your focus should go. There's general principles, and the general principle, directionally, general principle is, I'm going on pilgrimage for purification. Let me be clear internally what purification means. Purification means less of the forgetfulness and the day-to-day activities, not the activities specifically, but the forgetfulness of everyday activities. Let me leave that behind when I'm going on pilgrimage and give my attention, maximize my attention to the stages of progress and purification, that is leaving behind this and accepting that. And that is the purifying effect of the place of pilgrimage, the focus on the personality of Godhead, who makes this place of pilgrimage a place of pilgrimage. What are the wonderful qualities and features and pastimes, etc., etc. Let my attention go to Bhagavan more, and let my attention go less to the forgetfulness that's part of my day-to-day. What happens is the mind still goes to the day-to-day and the forgetfulness of day-to-day, even when you're on pilgrimage, but let me do less of that and more of this. And bring back, so then there's details that are, customized for each one of us, what that's going to look like, and some kind of vrata that says more of this and less of that, and when we're on pilgrimage, anticipation. A very nice one thing that's very nice for you or any one of us is occurs thoughts as he's going to meet Krishna in Vrindavan. He's sent by Kamsa, and he's contemplating meeting Krishna. So that is embedded with many nice instructions of how to prepare yourself when going on pilgrimage on a yatra or to a holy place. Those prayers, go there. It is very instructive. And what to bring back is remembrances of that experience and a renewed commitment to the process that will help me have that experience going forward in time. That is Shravanam, Kirtanam, Vishnu Smaranam. Not necessarily the photographs, or even the mental impressions, but the dedication to Bhagavad Dharma and the practical activities of Bhagavad Dharma. Let me become recharged. My battery is charged up now from that experience. Let me rededicate myself to Bhagavad Dharma. That's what you bring back. Do we have something? We have online questions? Okay, Srila Prabhupada ki? Grantaraj Srimad Bhagavatam ki? Gaur Premanandi. I have some Mahaprasadam from Radha Nilamadava in Houston, Texas. So, here we go.